Are you ready to have your website get found by the right people? Are you looking to rank at the top of Google so you get more traffic to your website? Are you ready to learn how to use SEO and content marketing to grow your organic traffic? If so, you are in the right place, my friend. Welcome to the Simple SEO Content Podcast, where I show you how to combine the power of SEO, search engine optimization, and content marketing to build your like, know, and trust factor with your audience, which allows you to get found by the right people and turn those visitors into buyers. No more frustration or confusion, and no more time wasted wondering if you're doing your SEO right. It's time to learn how to use SEO and content marketing to grow your business. Hi, welcome to the Simple SEO Content Podcast. I am so excited today. I have a special guest with me who is going to help us talk all about the numbers in our business. Carla, would you like to introduce yourself real quick and give us just a little bit of background about you and how you're going to help us? And then we'll hop right into our questions.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for having me. My name is Carla Moats, and I am a fractional CFO and a finance and strategy consultant and coach for female small business owners. And I basically help them, get control their finances, understand their numbers, and ultimately make more profit. That's really what I help them with, is put more money in their pocket.
Which is so important. That's one of the reasons that I focus on SEO and teaching people the things that I do, because you don't need to spend a ton of money on ads to get the traffic. So you keep more of the revenue in your pocket, giving you more profit. So as I was thinking about today's episode, I thought I can teach this. I've been in corporate, I've done budgets, I've done all of that, but Carla deals with this every single day. So I wanted to bring you in to really help my audience learn and understand and really just be able to take action. So what I want to do, I've got a few questions for you. I know in the online entrepreneur world, I was kind of shocked when I first made the transition years ago, how much focus there is on revenue numbers. And coming from the corporate world, revenue wasn't really the thing that we looked at. We looked at profit and profit margins. You know how I feel about profit margins, but they are important. But what's more important as a business owner? What should we be focusing on? Is it profit or is it revenue?
Well, I think they're both important. Ultimately, how to sell, how to create consistent revenue is always one of the first skills that business owners need to have. So if you're a new business owner, I always say you can't have profit if you don't have revenue. But I think ultimately profit is what puts money in your pocket, and it's what allows you to reinvest in your business. So once you've mastered the skill of generating consistent revenue, you've learned how to sell, and you're starting, to generate consistent revenue. And depending on your business model, that may not even be revenue every single month. Not every, if you're fully booked, maybe you can go a couple months without revenue. But you're at the point where you can go out and you can create revenue. That's when you really need to focus more on profit, because revenue really is a vanity metric. Especially, if we're not Amazon, we're not Apple, or even, Silicon Valley high-tech firm, right? Vanity, revenue is really a vanity metric. People are out there constantly, okay, first I want to reach 100K. Now I want to be 200K. Now I want to be 500K. Now I want to be $1 million. And, it's often, why are you trying to chase that number? Because at the end of the day, you can have $1 million business with a, $50,000 profit, or you can have a $200,000 business with a $100,000 profit. Which one would you rather have? I know which one I'd rather have.
Absolutely.
So a lot of it too is when you're trying to chase that revenue number. Why are you trying to chase it? Are you trying to chase it because somebody out there who happens to sell services to people to increase that revenue number is telling you that's what you should do? So, just realize chasing revenue does not mean you will make more profit. I think that's also one of the misnomers in the small business space, because just like you, when I was in corporate, we had a revenue goal, but our profit goal was much more important. We could miss our revenue goal, but we had to hit our profit margin goal. We had, whatever, even more so than the dollars, we had to hit the profit margin goal. And I think that's one of the biggest differences that I've also seen in the small business spaces. There's just this preponderance of focus on, on the revenue number. And I think people also think that, well, if I just chase a larger revenue number, the profit will follow. And that's often not the case. So
I've definitely seen that, because you see all these people and they're like, I made $1 million. But did you? You sold $1 million in revenue, but what did you actually bring home? And that, I think, is kind of the missing piece. And I'm so glad that you're talking about it, because every conversation that we have in some of the groups we're in, you're like, profit, 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 because that is what people need to understand and be able. That's really the only way you're going to grow, is if your business is profitable.
Well, and I think too, when you're buying, especially the programs that are selling you programs to increase your revenue, when they tell you, well, I'm going to help you add, $20,000 months, well, how much of that 20,000 am I going to keep? Ask them that, because most of them will not have an answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of the people, keep in mind too, a lot of the people that are selling you these programs, I've also found, they're like, I built it, but a lot of these people are not making money. Yes. Or they're making a very small percentage. So just because somebody tells you, hey, come, I'm going to sell you my system that I use to build my $500,000 business, doesn't mean they put $500,000 in pocket. And I think that's the biggest thing, is starting to create that more open dialogue and transparency around, don't tell me how much revenue you have, tell me how much profit you have, or how much you're paying yourself,
absolutely.
Taking a salary.
Are you paying yourself? I saw this firsthand. My first year in the business, I met somebody, we were business besties. We'd both come from the corporate world, and she was much further ahead than me. She'd been in business for herself for a couple of years. She had a 6-figure business. She was doing great on paper. She couldn't pay herself. She had never paid herself a penny, because it turned out she was spending too much on her Facebook ads. She was spending $600 a day on Facebook ads, and she was selling her product at too low a price and too low of a payment plan. So she was just racking up all these ad costs, these ad spends on her credit cards, but she didn't have the revenue coming in to actually support it. So she ended up having to close her business down and go back to the corporate world, because while she built a 6-figure business, she had no actual profit left because of what she was spending on her ads. And that's for most heartbreaking.
For most people, that's not sustainable. I mean, people think a lot of times here, well, yeah, Amazon or whoever, went all these years, but Amazon had, private equity firms that were backing them, and investors that were floating their cash flow, because their profit and cash flow are different, but, typically speaking, if you have cash flow issues, in small business, you typically also have profit issues.
Yeah. So, she had both. She didn't have the cash flow to pay the bills, and she didn't have the profit to pay the bills, because she didn't know how much she was spending on ads. It was heartbreaking to see, but also a really good learning lesson not to do that.
Yeah, it's not, it's not sustainable. And, one of the quickest ways you build an outsized business is to not focus on profit. When that's the other thing, is when you're only focusing on revenue, you can feel really good about yourself. I had a $20,000 month or a $25,000 month. You feel really good about it, but it's amazing how many small business owners I talk to. And one of the first questions I always ask them when they want to work with me is, well, what's your profit? And very often they will say, I have no idea. Yeah. I have no idea. Or I wait for my tax guy at the end of the year, or my accountant hasn't given, or my bookkeeper hasn't given me their numbers yet. You need to know your revenue, and you need to know your profit, because one of the quickest ways to build an outsized business, which is a business that your cash flow and your profit can't support, is to only focus on revenue. So if you want to be in business for the long haul, 5 years, 3 years, whatever, go make sure you know what your profit is. That's the very first thing. It's just it always astounds me. And again, if this is you, don't judge yourself or anything, because you're not alone. But coming out, the biggest thing that really astounded me was when I would ask people, well, what kind of profit are you making? And they're like, oh, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea. They know
I
the revenue number, but they have no idea how much they're actually making.
I found it amazing when I came into this world and nobody talked about profit. So I'm so glad that you're here talking about it and helping educate. I'm super curious, and you may not be able to give an exact number, but what percentage of profit is ideal for a small business owner? And does it differ? I'm sure it's going to differ from industry to industry, depending if you're investing in ads and what you're doing. But what's kind of a target that you look for?
Yeah, I mean, it is, this is one of those things where there is no real right answer.
Yeah.
It varies based on your business model. What does your business model look like? Your industry, how mature are you? Service businesses tend to be higher profit than product businesses. Solo businesses tend to be higher profit than those with a large team. If I have a physical location, that's going to tend to be lower profit than somebody who is working remotely. So there's not really a definitive answer. And actually, if you go out and, I used before this call, I went out and Googled, what is a good profit margin? And the numbers I see on the internet is like 7%. I was like, seriously, 7%? But it's also how much are you paying yourself for salaries? I mean, I have a client right now who pays themselves a very healthy salary. So the profit margin is lower. So I also say, look at not just your profit too, but, the profit plus what you're paying yourself, look at those numbers together. So there's not really an easy answer, but, I tell people, like, if you're in the, say, one-on-one coaching space, it's realistic to be paying yourself a 70%, be taking home a 70% profit margin. I know a coach who's doing, runs a group coach membership program. He's doing about 14 million a year, and she's making 40% margins, and she's got 27 employees. So if you're sitting down there at 10, 15, 20%, and you're in a service business, you definitely got room for, you definitely have room, for improvement. So
You might want to cut some of your expenses if
well,
you're.
there's two types of profit. There's a gross profit, which is, what it costs me to deliver my service. And then there's my net profit. So a lot of it too is, what kind of overhead do you have? Overhead is the biggest thing that sucks out profit in a business. So, a lot of it is, in a business with a lot of overhead. That's one of the reasons coaching. And when I say coaching, control coaching consultants, you probably throw realtors in there. They tend to be higher because they have less overhead. And if I'm a business that's doing a lot of ads, and that's how I'm building my business versus somebody who's doing things more, using SEO or organic marketing. Facebook ads are a big overhead cost, so
Absolutely.
A lot of how big is your overhead?
Absolutely. So I want to go back a moment ago. You talked about paying yourself. How do you know what to pay yourself, especially when you're just starting out? Maybe you've been doing this, and I talk to a lot of people and they're like, I don't really know. I know because I follow a very specific method, but I'm curious, what do you recommend? How do people figure out what they can afford to pay themselves?
Well, I have my own podcast, and I just cut an episode recently that's called "Profit is Personal," because I do believe that for most small business owners, if you're not trying to cash out, or especially if you're the face of your brand, it can vary because your owner's pay that you're going to take out of your business is really made up of two things. One, it's made up of your salary, assuming you're an S corp. You pay yourself a salary, and then you can also take a percentage of your profit out of your business. But I always tell clients when they're trying to figure out how much they want to pay, one, you want to have a conversation with your tax advisor, because your tax advisor is going to help you figure out, how do I split the money between salary and distributions, because there are tax advantages to distributions that you don't get with salary. But it's what's it cost me to live, what kind of salary. So for me, I have a day job. It just pays me a healthy salary, and so my first goal is I want to be able to replace my 6-figure corporate income. And you said you came from corporate. I'm assuming that was probably a goal of yours at some point. There's other people I know who they want to retire their spouse. So, maybe they're making, they've got to replace their spouse's salary. So it's really sit down. What are your living expenses? But also, what are your lifestyle goals? What do you want to be able to do? Do you want to be able to take 3 months off every year? and be able to afford that? Do you want to be able to work remotely half of the year? I mean, I do believe, especially because I'm working mostly with small business owners, not the ones that are getting private equity or trying to to cash out. It's what's the lifestyle that you want to create for for your business. And then from a tax perspective, if you're an S corp, you are, the IRS requires you to pay yourself a reasonable salary, and that's where your tax advisor comes in to say, well, what is a reasonable salary for my business? But you're allocating your revenue ultimately in four buckets: as owners pay, taxes, profit, and your expenses. And that's really what you have to look at is how do I want to allocate each of those buckets. So
Okay, great.
um,
I know so many people, like for me, same as you, replacing my corporate six-figure salary was one of my main goals. But I also tacked on, I only want to work 3 days a week in the process. I want to work part-time because I still have a young child and I want to be able to be that present mom. Well, he still wants me because let's be real, he's 8. He's not going to want me to be around all the time for much longer. So I'll scale up once he's a little bigger. But I want to replace my corporate salary and work 3 days a week. And I want to be able to take all the school holidays and breaks off. So I definitely have to manage my finances to make it work. And I'm probably more conservative in what I invest in the business than some because of my overall goals. I want as much profit as possible so that I can have that lifestyle that I'm working towards as well. Because I've worked the corporate six-figure and they don't give you much life.
and in my case, like the original reason I wanted to go into business myself is I'm a single parent. I have a senior in high school, and we're looking at private liberal arts colleges. And
Oh,
I started looking at the sticker tags, the price tags for these schools.
uh-huh.
We're talking, anywhere from $25,000 to $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
So again, I talk about finding your profit why. What is the driver, and it can evolve, but yeah, know what it is you really want your lifestyle to look like, but then just realize you're going to, for every dollar that comes in, you have to split it ultimately into those four buckets. You have to account for Uncle Sam, you have to account for your pay to yourself, your profit, and then what's left is your operating expense bucket. So
Absolutely. So I'm curious, and you may or may not have an answer on this one, but I'm curious if you have thoughts on how much you should reinvest in your business, your operating expenses. Should you take part of your profit and invest that? How do you do it? I know how I do it, but I'm curious what you do.
what I like to do is take that profit, and again, hear there's not a standard answer for everything. A lot of
Yeah.
it depends on what your business and personal goals are. But like for me, I put money into my, I have a certain amount for profit, and I want to take half of that out as a bonus, and I want to put half of it back into the business. Now, maybe I have something where I'm, ramping something up, and maybe in 1 year I'm going to invest a little bit more. But generally speaking, I come from corporate where I had a bonus plan.
Mm-hmm.
I had a bonus plan at the end of the year, and that's the way I look at the profit is if, so for instance, if I say my profit goal for this year is say 30%, well, certainly anything over 30%, if I happen to achieve more than 30%, I'm going to definitely bonus myself off. Think of it as a CEO. What CEO of a big company out there do you know that does not get a performance-based bonus
Yeah.
based on how much profit he delivers in his business? You hear about these big golden parachutes that these big corporate executives have. Yeah, they get salary, but they're making a lot of their money off of performance-based initiatives. So again, that can be your starting point is whatever you have in profit, you can take half of it and put it back into your business, and you can take half of it as a basically profit distribution. And again, that could, fund your vacation to Italy or your kids' college education or whatever. I think the bigger thing on though, and I particularly see this in the online space, is why are you reinvesting in your business?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are reinvesting in their business from a place of fear, or because somebody's told them to do that, or because some super guru has told them, well, for the first 5 years of your business, you should invest 100% of everything you make back into your business. And guess who's benefiting from that?
the guru who's
The
selling
guru
you
is
stuff.
telling you that. So
Yeah.
again, it's really there's a big difference to me between somebody saying, well, I'm reinvesting in my business because that's what, super guru told me, who sells $25,000 masterminds or whatever is telling me to do,
Yeah.
versus I have a legitimate, I have a plan and I understand that when I put this $30,000 into my business, I'm expecting, and I've actually done analysis that says it's going to make me $50,000. So if you're going to go and invest, in that $25,000 mastermind, what are you actually going to get? A lot of the returns on a lot of these programs are very, very soft.
Yes, they
Like,
are. They are.
it'll raise your mindset. Okay, what are you going to do with that? I think
Yeah.
that's one of the missing from reinvesting in business is really saying, what's my actual return,
Yeah.
going to be?
What am I
So,
going to get? Exactly. What's my return on my investment? Because you're
and how
putting
are you
that
holding
money in,
yourself
you've got to
accountable?
get something back out.
Yeah, how are you holding yourself accountable for that? Because you hear all
Yeah.
the time from people who've invested in programs and come back and say, "Well, I didn't really get out of it." But how are you holding yourself accountable too for what you're gonna, get out of
Did
the
you
program?
participate? Did you do the work? Did you learn? Did you implement? I It's funny, I do my profit exactly the same, and probably because I came from corporate and I love a good bonus check. So it's 50% goes to back to reinvest in the business. And for me, I use it for things like recently I ran Facebook ads to grow my list to prepare for a launch. And I reinvested once I had proven that things worked organically and I had tested and proven that my ads could ROI and I could get people to join my program based on my ad funnel. Then I started investing in it based using some of the profit. But even then, I did $20 a day because I didn't want to
Right.
go crazy with it.
And I think the thing you're doing that a lot of business owners are doing is you're being intentional, because I think what you see a lot of times is, there's no doubt there's a lot of experimentation in getting to that first 100K. You gotta
Yeah.
put a lot of risk out there. You can't wait, you can't wait for everything to be A plus quality. You put some C level work out there and you see what sticks. All right. Once you start to build that consistent revenue, now you need to start being a little more intentional,
Yeah.
and you need to have strategy behind what you're doing. What I see so many times is, well, so and so joined such and such a program and it worked for them. So, everybody says that's what that's what my next step should be but it's really you getting intentional about, what kind of business do you want to have, and when I'm spending this dollar, what am I going to get back from the dollar? Most people aren't doing that. They're just kind of blindly spending the money.
Yeah.
And once you get more intentional, that really is probably the bigger game changer than anything else is, getting really intentional about how you're spending your money. So
Absolutely. And I think that's something that you and I and those of us who came from the corporate world can help others who don't have the same type background that we have to teach them how to be intentional and how to prove your ROI and how to understand. I've had to explain to clients what the ROI was on marketing campaigns for many years, and some days it's good and some days it's not, but you have to be able to explain that and look at it and understand it. And I love being able to have conversations like this about other parts of marketing and business ownership to help. And we've reinvested. We also went to Disney World with some of the profit in at spring break. So the kid was very happy about that one.
I bet. Yeah, it's there. I don't want to tell people not to manage by their gut, because your gut, is a big piece of it. But you get to a certain point where if you really want it to be sustainable, you got to go beyond just your gut, and and also use data, and make sure that what kind of return you're getting, and you're not just doing things on a whim. And I just see a lot of business owners that are just kind of do things on a whim.
Yeah.
Which serves you in that beginning stage, but doesn't serve you as well as you grow, because it's one of the quickest ways you build an outsized business. So
Absolutely. And we don't want that. I have one last question for you. I'm curious if there's a model that you recommend for entrepreneurs or a way for them to manage. I personally use Profit First. I came across it my very first year in business, and it clicked to me. I say I don't have a numbers head, even though I have an MBA. But my accounting and finance classes in grad school were very tough for me, but it just made sense to me and it clicked and it was easy to follow. And I've used it for the last 6 years to consistently pay myself and to manage everything. Do you follow profit first? Do you have something else that's similar? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think profit first is great. I mean, there's a reason that so many people, it's pretty well known in the business space. I don't follow it strictly because I personally, I'm not investing in all those different bank accounts. I just don't,
Yeah.
I don't have enough volume. So I guess I would say I use a simplified version of it. I definitely set aside my tax money. That's one of the big things that I see business owners not doing is they're forgetting, they're either wanting to do everything they can to avoid paying taxes. So that's one of the reasons they justify not having any profit, or they do well. And at the end of the year, they don't have the money. So I set aside profit. I set aside taxes. I don't use all the bank accounts.
Yeah.
I think particularly for people who feel intimidated by numbers, I think it's a really good place to start. I think one of the downfalls, I think, to the book, and the book is a great book, by the way, you can go read Profit First, but it's not, the book isn't really tailored to service businesses. If you read between the lines, you know anything about finance, you can tell he's looking at a lot of manufacturing and product-based business. And if you're somebody who's already losing money or not having it, a lot of times they'll get overwhelmed. They'll be like, well, one little small step isn't going to help me. And a lot of what he talks about in the book is, if your profit percentage today is 5%, you want it to be 20%, you're not going to go from 5 to 20 tomorrow. It might take you a couple of years, 2 or 3 years to get from 5 to 20. But I think it's a great tool. I think it takes away a lot of the overwhelm that a lot of entrepreneurs have, with numbers. I don't think it's totally a substitute for understanding your numbers, because I still think, people should still be looking at their profit and loss statement. They should still understand their gross profit. They should still understand their net profit. But I think what Profit First accomplishes, which is the number one thing my number one tip I give to your listeners and anyone else, is the number one thing you can do to become more profitable is to actually set a profit goal. And basically, Profit First it's a process. Part of Profit First is process. That's what it's doing. Even before I read that book, the very first thing I did is I have a revenue goal. More importantly, I have a profit goal. And most small business owners are setting revenue goals, and they are not setting a profit goal. So whether you use Profit First or separately, just set yourself an intentional profit goal that says this year my profit's going to be 30%. If you're already in business, look at what you're currently making today, and improve it by 1 percentage point, 2 percentage points. You're not going to break the back of your business by cutting expenses or anything. But that's the biggest benefit of Profit First is it makes people intentional about their profit, because it flips the equation and says, instead of profit being what's left over after my expenses, I'm going to determine upfront how much profit I'm going to make, and then that's going to determine how much money I have, to spend in my business. So.
Yeah, for me, it's worked great. It was easy to understand. And I'm like you, I don't have all of the, I think they recommend 10 or 12 bank accounts.
Yeah, I mean,
that was overwhelming. But
it can get unwieldy. And I think one of the problems you have is you're still going to need bookkeeping, because you still got to file taxes.
Yeah.
Like I said, you should still look at your profit and loss statement. And the more bank accounts you have, typically your higher bookkeeping fees are going to be, because your bookkeeper has to process and reconcile those transactions.
Yeah.
I don't use all of those accounts. But yes, it can get a little unwieldy. And I don't think you have to do that. I also don't allocate. I think he recommends twice a month. I do it once a month.
Yeah.
So but you can definitely take Profit First. And I work with some service business owners, and that's what we do. We'll take Profit First, and we'll implement it in concept. Again, primarily setting aside owners pay taxes and profit upfront. We won't necessarily do it, in 10 different or however many number different accounts. And we won't necessarily rejig our accounts every 2 weeks. We might do it once a month.
Yeah.
But again, the idea is set your profit aside upfront. Don't wait for profit to be something to happen to you. Go out and make profit happen.
So really what I'm getting from the conversation is we need to be on top of our numbers, period. We need to know our revenue. We need to know our profit. And we need to maintain and manage our expenses and really think about what we're doing. And I know nobody can see this because this is audio only, but Carla, I got my sticky note here with my revenue goal and my profit goal, and I keep it at my monitor. so that I can watch it. I want to stay in that 6-figure range. And I want, between my compensation and my profit, I want in that 60 to 80% range, because I'm service-based and I'm online courses. So it's not, and I work out of my home. I don't have a high overhead.
When I love how you're looking at it as owners pay and profit together, because that's one of the big things it's, again, it's a little murkier to me when you're working with these small business owners that, where, they're the face of, they're their brand, they're a solopreneur. It's really, not just profit, it's profit and owner's compensation, tied together. But yeah, I think that is great. Yeah, I think a lot of the challenges that business owners have with profit, it all starts with they're afraid of their numbers. They don't understand their numbers. You're the second or third person I've talked to who has actually come from a corporate background and even a finance background. And even myself, I mean, I came from a finance background and I've had to adapt a lot of what I do, in the small business space. But I think a lot of it really starts with, I'm afraid of my numbers. So I'm just going to avoid them. I'm not going to talk about them. And I tell people, I was like, whether you look at your numbers today or not, what's already happened has happened. You're not looking at your numbers isn't actually changing anything. It's just keeping you in, either, denial, you just don't know what's going on. And so as soon as you start to look at those numbers and you start to simplify them and understand them, the calm that people feel, even if the number isn't a number they love, calm they feel just in suddenly it not being this thing that's hanging over their head, where they're wondering. Now they know. It's like going to the doctor and getting the diagnosis. Now you have something you can work with. So,
perfect, absolutely perfect, and what people need to know. Carla, how can people get in touch with you? Do you have something to help them understand their numbers? I'm hoping you do.
Yeah, I do. They can go visit at www.carlamoats.com/resources. And they will find, I have a cash flow and a profit guide. And I also have a guide to understanding your numbers better that kind of takes the numbers in your business that I think you really need to understand and, breaks them down to the basics and tries to really eliminate that avoidance that I see a lot of business owners going through with their, with their numbers. And then, tell people all the time, don't say you're bad with numbers. Just say, you haven't figured it out yet. Because it's you don't need all the fancy lingo. So that's what that's what I try to do with my guide. Break it down in a simple way.
So make sure you download those guides from Carla. And guys, get to know your numbers. Your numbers do not need to be scary. It's not overwhelming. You will feel more in control of your business when you understand how it's working. And this is the key to being able to pay yourself and being able to live the life that you want and really have that balance that you're looking for. Whether you want to work 2 days a week or 5 days a week, you want to work 10 hours a week or 50 hours a week, understanding your numbers will help you to get to the life that you're looking to live. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today on this Business Owner Simple SEO Content Podcast episode. Carla, I'm so glad that you could join us today and really help break this down for everyone.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was great being here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And that's all for today's episode of the Simple SEO Content Podcast. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you visit my website, etchedmarketing.com, and visit the freebies tab. Right there, you're going to find the SEO Content Quick Start Guide along with the free SEO class. So you'll have everything you need to know to get started with SEO and content marketing. Then do me a favor, if you wouldn't mind, if you would do a rating and a review of this podcast on your favorite platform. That would really help spread the message, and I do greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, you can always DM me on Instagram at Etched Marketing Academy, and I will see you right back here next week.